If you're anything like me, you're always looking to become a better cook, but there are certain pots and pans that every home cook needs to keep stocked in their kitchen.
And joining us now is personal chef Bill Collins from chefbill.com, and he's going to tell you what you need to create the perfect meal every single day.
Absolutely, it's guaranteed.
Guaranteed.
Or your money back.
Or your money back.
That's
okay,
right.
we're going to start at this end with skillets.
We're going to start at skillets, and these two, you generally need to have two skillets. A large one, about 12-inch, and about an 8 or 9-inch skillet. These are good for this is good for omelets or just a couple pieces of chicken, and this is good for bigger things. So these two are essential. But what I like to tell people when they're buying any kitchen equipment is buy the best that you can afford. And the reason is that if you buy a good set of pans, they will pretty much last forever. These right here, these are almost 20 years old. And
they look brand new still.
Yeah, a little dirty on the outside, but these that's how good they are. And here's what you want to look for when you buy any kind of a saucepan is you do not want an aluminum inside. The really cheaper pans are aluminum inside. And here's why you don't want it. Is because aluminum reacts with acids. It could be lemon juice, it could be tomatoes, and that can have an effect and a little aftertaste on the food that you put all this time into making.
Wow.
So this way, if you go with a nicer pan, but as you can see, they will last for many, many years. Now, it's one thing to get a stainless steel inside. If you want to spend some more money, and I always think that's a good idea, is they're pans that have a copper lining inside. That gives you good, steady heat, even heat throughout. So you don't get like these little burn marks on the pan because it's too hot here and cool there. So that's what it's all about, steady, even heating.
But I bought a non-stick pan with the black inside. And I always think that's the best choice.
Well, my preference is not to get one. Now, it's just my preference, and I feel terrible that. But the reason I don't like that is because they're really actually very good and they do what they're supposed to do. But they're also very sensitive in that they can be damaged very quickly. You have to use a wooden or a plastic utensil on it. My concern is that somebody says, "Oh, let me help you in the kitchen," and they take a pair of metal tongs or metal spoon and they jab and they break the surface. Once that surface is broken, it's going to start breaking down.
Yeah.
And so you could have a $150 pan that you've had for 10 years or 10 days. And once that starts to break, and the other thing also is you cannot put it into a very hot oven. Over 400 degrees. They say that in the instruction books with them because they just can't take the high heat. Well, why would you want to do that? Well, say you're pan searing a steak and you always want to get the nice sear on it and finish it in the oven. Well, you can't. You have to get another pan out and do it that way.
Oh, and that's just too much of a pain. Well, we could do a whole segment on skillets.
I could do skillets.
My goodness. All right, so we're going to move on to saucepans. Is that right?
Yes, saucepans, and these are also very important. Whether you're doing just heating up, cooking some vegetables, you can steam some vegetables in there quickly, or whatever you need heated up. Again, the same thing, get the best you can afford so you don't get the hot spots, because say you're just reheating a tomato sauce, you don't want to have it burn and stick to certain parts. And that's the same thing as you want to have a stock pot, and that's if you're making soup or any large quantity. So really what these are all about are however much food you're making. This is fine if you're heating up spaghetti sauce for just one person. If you've got the family or more people, some of these bigger pots as well, or if you're making the tomato sauce.
Now let's go to baking. From cooking to baking, we have a lot of things here. What do you recommend when it comes to bakeware?
When it comes to bakeware, I recommend two kinds of sheet pans to have. This is a traditional one. This is actually called a half sheet pan because in restaurants they have twice this size, and it's got the sides on it, and this is really quite good. And this will take care of 99% of everything you want to do. I also like to have these without the sides. These are also called sheet pans, but also called cookie sheets, cookie pans, because the heat, because cookies are in for such a quick amount of time that you want as much heat to get it to it directly. This might seem minor, but the heat has to kind of work its way down the side. Whether you've got the sides of the pan here, this way you don't have that on the cookie sheet, and it's that much more effective.
A little more even too.
That's exactly it.
Now, are these dry racks right here to dry off your cookies once you've taken them out of the oven?
Yes, they're generally called cooling
because they're
racks.
Cooling racks. That's the word we're looking for.
Cooling racks.
Okay.
Now
I get it.
Unless your cookies are wet, but these are cooling racks. And again, these will generally last forever. And what I also tend to do is I'm broiling. I put these into a sheet pan, so I'm broiling fish or something like that, and I use these on top of the pan to keep the fish on top as well. I do clean these off before I put cookies on.
Good.
And then of course this is just a bigger version of a cooling rack. This is important because if you take something out of the oven, if you just rest it on the counter or on a on a flat surface, with this the air gets underneath it and just helps it cool that much faster.
Can cool evenly too.
Exactly.
All right, let's talk some Pyrex dishes here. What do we have?
Pyrex, these are just classics in that these are primarily used for baking. You might be making brownies, you might be making macaroni and cheese, and you can even roast things in the oven. These can take a very high temperature, but not a screaming, broiling high temperature. So the way I differentiate these from the metal roasting pan is, say I'm roasting a chicken in there and I want to put it right on the burner to make some gravy afterwards. You can't do that with the glass. This cannot take the very, very high heat. You also cannot broil with
it'll
these.
explode. I've done that to a Pyrex bowl before.
Exactly, and you can't put these under the broiler
I almost
either.
lost an eye.
Steph's made all the mistakes. Everything.
No, it's true.
Well, I have two, but I don't know as minimum as readily as Seth. So
Understandable.
Thank you.
So we're going to use this. And now let's talk about the big guy. Now, what's this at the end and with this little device in it?
That's a once-a-year pan. It's
Thanksgiving?
completely up to Thanksgiving.
Thanksgiving pan.
You can put a turkey up to a small Buick in there, and it's going to roast beautifully. And here's why, and you can use one of the foil pans that you buy for $3 or $5, which is perfectly fine. The advantage of this is with the $3 or $5 one, they're sometimes very hard to get out of the oven. You might want to put a sheet pan underneath just because it'll go a wobbly.
Right.
Oh yeah.
This one, this is solid. You can, with the handles on the side, you can lift the turkey easily up out of there, and you'll have all the pan drippings in there with to make your Thanksgiving gravy with. But it's also just so big and sturdy when you want to move it around in the oven. When you're basting the turkey, it's easier to do than the lighter, thinner pans.
Now, Chef Bill, here's my honest question, though. I want you to answer it. You can buy one of these pans, you can spend a bunch on them, or those aluminum ones, the use them once and then throw them away pans. What's more cost effective? Keeping one of these for 30 years or buying one of those, throwing it away after every Thanksgiving?
Buying the aluminum ones and throwing them away.
All right.
That's cost effective, and only talking about cost, because again, there might be a frustration factor, dropping the turkey factor. To say if you use one of the other ones, make sure you have a sheet pan underneath it, because that'll help you take it out of the oven and maneuver it around. But sometimes the sheet pan isn't big enough because some of those pans are very big, so then you find you go to put it in, and because it's one thing to take a cold turkey and put it in the oven. It's another thing to take
You forget about that. Now we're out of time, Chef Bill, but I know we're talking about essentials.
Sure.
There's a cast iron pan here. Is that essential?
It is essential. It's also a great way if you're just beginning. The most cost-effective thing in the world, $25. This is over 80 years old. They last forever.
And they're great to have in the kitchen.
They sure are.
Have it, according to Chef Bill. Thanks so much for all
Thank you.
these tips. And for all of Chef Bill's advice, you can head to our website, mymassappeal.com, later on today.